before we start climbing around on top of this thing, it seemed like a good idea to stabilize the structure with sheathing. You might be thinking, why doesn't he bring the scaffold from the inside of the house to the outside of the house? Wouldn't that make this easier? Well, I would have to take the scaffold apart and then put it all back together again. And maybe I'm not quite ready to deal with that. So we're going to keep doing it this way. The hard way. Once again, we're going to use 2x4 straps on the outside of the house. Also set some screws at the base. You try to slide the plywood into position. Any way you can. Not like that. Let's try more straps. Let's strap in the straps. That's one piece down. The building inspector is going to check the nailing pattern on your sheathing, so you got to get your nail gun to every corner. Each sheet of this sheathing was a long, drawn-out battle, so let's speed things up. This straps and a ladder method of installing sheathing is not going to work for the next row up. So we'll have to come back to this later. As I start building higher up, I can't keep dropping these 2x12s all over the place. So I built myself a little pocket hand on one end. This will lock the rim joist in place until I get the nail gun up there. Sometimes it takes a while to get up there because this 20-foot aluminum ladder is very bouncy. And definitely not because I'm afraid of heights. Once the rim joists are installed, it's time to get the rest of these 2x12s up on the top plates. Like the first floor, we roll them into position and nail them in place. Next, we need to get these 4x8 sheets of dense subflooring up onto the first floor deck. And then up 10 more feet onto the second floor joists. As I struggle here, it occurred to me I still needed to get this subflooring and these long 2x12s up 19 feet on top of the living room space and span them across an 18-foot opening. Once the material was up, it was easy enough to install. Well, it was easy enough on the first day. My second day on the second floor, the Oklahoma wind came sweeping down the plain. If you've never lived in Oklahoma, you may not be aware of how strong the winds can be. I kept having to stop because the sustained gusts were strong enough to knock me over. If you don't believe me, watch this. Let's zoom in and see that again. Luckily, I wasn't up on the ladder at the time. This is the 23rd consecutive day of framing, and it was time to make a decision. To build the top part of this house, I'm going to need to rent a large piece of equipment, or spend roughly the same money and pay a 3-man crew. Paying guys with their own nail guns seemed like a much better value. So that's what I did. The 3rd floor joist got installed over the weekend. One of the guys preferred not to be on camera, so I didn't get any video. What you're watching instead is me trying to fix the arm of my drone. You might remember in the last episode, I crashed the drone into a tree. I tried gluing it back together, but that didn't work. So I ordered a new arm. I thought it would be plug and play, but it was not. Had to pick up a cheap soldering iron, then desolder the smallest wires in the world. Then I could swap out the leg and solder in the new smallest wires in the world. And now, please work. Okay, back to the job site. With the 3rd level joist installed, I once again started working on the subfloor. Still a little windy up here. Wanted to explain why I'm laying down like a beached whale, flailing around. You have to get the tongue part of the decking into the groove, while hammering it from the other side. If you've ever installed flooring, you know this can be challenging. And laying down is more comfortable when you're 25 feet off the ground, with heavy winds and no railing. I put it off for as long as I could, but here we are. We are back at the circle of lost time. Earlier, I had pinned the center of the circle and traced it out using a tape measure and a piece of string. I then traced this same curve onto 3/4 inch subflooring. I used this Advantech subfloor because it has more water resistance than standard plywood, but it was also a lot harder to cut. This is cutting with a jigsaw at real-time speed. Let's fast forward a bit. I stacked the 3/4 inch Advantech 2 layers high. This made it 1.5 inches tall, which matches the bottom plate for the rest of the house. I'm spacing the studs at 8 inches on center instead of 16. I'm hoping this will make it stronger, but it also gives me more places to attach the exterior sheathing and interior drywall. I need as many points of attachment as I can get when I'm trying to bend flat material. I nailed together 2 20-foot long 2x4s and set that up as the first post. Because of the circle shape, each individual stud and post needs its own set of straps to hold it in place. After getting a few studs locked in place, I started nailing on the top plates. This required saddling up on the top rail of the scaffold. I was finally starting to build up a tolerance for being up high. I kept working my way around the circle. For each little section, I would strap down 3 posts, then climb up and attach the top plate. Next, I would hang the rest of the studs from the top plate, and then climb down and pin them at the bottom. Everything was going really well, but I still had the entry piece to build. If you look close, you might notice there's no structural support holding up this little half wall above the entry. The bottom plate and top plate will hold it in place temporarily, but when I add the weight of the roof, this little section is going to sag and eventually fail. My original idea was to install a curved header. But now that I can see it, I can see how the middle of the curved header will want to tilt forward. That could create a lot of weird twisting stresses on the adjacent studs. This is a problem I need to solve, but this video is already getting long, so I'm going to have to come back to this later. In the next video, we start building the roof. And I investigate a hole in the ground.